In the past year, Israel has released more videos of airstrikes than perhaps any military in the history of warfare. More than 1,300 grainy clips of strikes in Gaza have been posted on social media. They show only a fraction of the tens of thousands of strikes conducted by the Israeli military since October 7th. They are those that the military chose to release, the ones they wanted the world to see, but who was actually killed. In the largest public analysis of military strike footage, Air Wars, in collaboration with Sky News, reviewed hundreds of clips released by the Israeli military from the first month of the war. We identified nearly 20 strikes in which civilians were harmed that the Israeli military itself published footage of. In these strikes alone, Air Wars found that more than 400 civilians were reportedly killed. In response to the brutal Hamas-led October 7th assault and the kidnapping of hundreds of people, Israel launched one of the largest military campaigns in modern history. Within a month, the Israeli Defense Forces declared it had hit more than 12,000 targets, reportedly killing more than 7,000 Palestinians. Almost every day for the first month of the war, the Israeli Air Force posted footage of strikes on social media, including X, formerly known as Twitter. The videos are typically black and white, with multiple strikes on different locations compiled into single videos with generalized captions about targeting Hamas. There are rarely any victims visible, and few locational details published. Through a process called Geolocation, we compared more than 600 clips from the first month with satellite imagery and reports from Gaza of civilians killed or injured. Despite most of these clips being too low resolution or including too few details to locate, we found the exact locations of 72 strikes. In 17 of these, the footage matched the exact location where Air Wars had documented reports of civilians killed or injured. In these strikes, at least 448 civilians were reportedly killed, including 204 children and 123 women. The Israeli army rejected the findings of this investigation, stating that many of the accusations and claims were baseless and constitute speculation. It did not specify which accusations it was referring to. The videos were released by the Israeli military to portray the bombing campaign as precise and targeted, designed to minimize civilian casualties. This investigation offers a different story. By detailing the full human cost of just 3 strikes, we uncover not precision, but devastating levels of civilian harm. At 6:22 p.m. on October 9, 2023, the Israeli Defense Forces tweeted this video alongside 15 other strikes. The caption made no specific mention of this mosque, stating that planes were striking throughout Gaza and wreaking havoc on Hamas terrorists. But when and where was this strike? And who was killed? 7 hours before the tweet, the Al-Sousi Mosque in Al-Shati refugee camp was destroyed. A photographer who arrived at the scene shortly after told Air Wars he saw dead and injured Palestinians being brought out from nearby homes and shops. Some had been queuing at a water fountain when the bomb landed. At least 10 civilians were reportedly killed, including an 84-year-old woman and a mother and her infant son. While religious sites have special protections under international humanitarian law, residents said there was no warning before the attack. We verified the strike's location by comparing ground footage with satellite imagery. Among the debris, the distinctive domes found on the roof can be seen in satellite imagery and the IDF footage. Before the war, the square was a popular meeting place in the refugee camp, hosting markets, volleyball games, and screenings of World Cup matches. In this video, taken 3 years ago, children gathered outside the mosque after Friday prayers as a charity staged a performance to help those exposed to trauma through war. The Israeli military did not respond to questions about this specific strike, but highlighted Hamas's history of operating from civilian neighborhoods. The IDF directs its strikes towards military targets and military operatives only, and does not target civilian objects and civilians, a statement read. Whilst militaries have published airstrike footage in the past, it has never been on this scale. So why has the Israeli military chosen to release so many videos?
The first narrative they want to push out towards the domestic audience is that we're winning. After 11 months of hardship and war that cost a lot of money, cost the lives of a lot of Israeli soldiers, we're winning. Number two message is a message of deterrence, which is aimed at Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah, others in the axis of resistance, to say, if you attack us, this is what will happen to you. The problem with that is, though, that these messages are sent broadly, and so I think the most important sort of audience globally now is the international community, who view this war increasingly critically in terms of war crimes being committed, some calling it a genocide. So in this context, Israel should show restraint, should show that when they strike, they do so in a targeted fashion. All of the footage being pushed out by the IDF suggests the opposite.
On October 27th, the IDF posted a compilation of 10 airstrikes, with a caption stating 250 Hamas targets had been struck that day. In the first clip, the subtitle, "Strike of a Hamas Terror Tunnel," accompanies a series of explosions. We verified this building as the Taj Tower, a 7-story residential block in an affluent neighborhood of Gaza City.
حينما قالوا لي أنني سأموت شعرت بالفرح لحظة تحركت عقيدة الحياة في.
This is Hala Saleh, reading a passage she posted on her Instagram. Her passions were her 4 children and reading, and she dreamed of opening her own bookshop in Gaza. With days of intense bombing, the family, including Hala's daughters, Maimuna and Habiba, fled their home to shelter with relatives in Taj Tower. On the day of the strike, 18 of the family members were in one apartment. Hala and Maimuna sharing a bed, trying to sleep after a night of strikes, while Habiba was curled up on her phone on the balcony. When the tower was bombed, Hala's brother Hisham was in southern Gaza. After several failed calls to Hala's cell phone and a day searching in hospitals, he travelled to the tower block.
مربع كامل صعب 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 صعب. كمية البيوت اللي واقعة فوق سكانها، يعني البرج واقع. اكتشف انه كل واحد بدور على اهله، يعني كل عيلة بتدور على سكانها، واجتهاد شخصي من الناس.
Eventually, Hisham found Hala's body among the rubble.
رفعوا كمان مرة، وبعديها حاولنا نطلع هالة وميمنة. طبعا أنا في الأول كنت شايف رجلين هالة، وفي مسافة إني أنا أقدر أفوت لها، بس إني صعب أقدر أسحبها أو أطلعها من السقف اللي واقع عليها. قعدنا نحاول نشيل الرمل، وأنا كنت شبه.
In total, 15 members of Hala's family were killed. After her death, an artist's drawing of Hala with 4 small birds perched on her was circulated on Instagram. Air Wars identified at least 101 civilians killed in this strike, including 44 children and 37 women. The Israeli military gave a blanket evacuation order on October 13th to more than 1 million residents of Gaza City, but many had nowhere to go. In previous conflicts in Gaza, the IDF issued evacuation warnings before striking multi-story residential buildings, giving residents up to an hour to flee. But those in Taj received no warning.
ولو كان في أي إشي زي ما أنت تفضلتي لكان عملوا احتياطهم، كان لبسوا طلعوا، بس لا ما وصلهم أي معلومة نهائي.
International law requires that states do everything possible to warn civilians. The IDF stated the target was a Hamas military tunnel, though it published no evidence for this claim. Lawyers think that the stated target being infrastructure, as opposed to a militant or moving target, may have legal significance.
It's not really controversial that a military tunnel would be a military objective. So under the law of armed conflict, you might say a tunnel could be attacked. But if you attack a tunnel in the knowledge that you're going to destroy a multi-story civilian building and kill all the people inside, then that civilian harm has to be proportionate to the military advantage you would achieve in destroying the tunnel. So a tunnel is not going anywhere. There's absolutely no reason you would not evacuate that building before you launch that attack if you were complying with international humanitarian law, because it requires you to take all feasible precautions to minimize incidental civilian harm. So I think in publishing that video, Israel has actually not left themselves with anywhere to go in relation to claiming that that was a lawful attack.
The Israeli army did not respond to questions about this specific strike, but said, "The IDF regards every loss of civilian life as a profound tragedy and approaches it with the utmost seriousness." It added that the IDF takes all feasible precautions to mitigate the harm to the civilian population, including temporary evacuation effort of the population for their protection. If critical lawyers aim to ultimately use the strike footage against Israel, it appears that Israeli government lawyers may also fear the same outcome. An Air Wars analysis of the frequency with which Israel has been posting strike footage shows a major drop-off in the wake of a case brought against Israel in the International Court of Justice. In the first month of the war, the Israeli Air Force posted more than 600 strike videos on Twitter, with nearly 200 in November and December. In January, South Africa announced it was taking Israel to the ICJ on grounds of genocide. The case relied heavily upon statements made by Israeli officials and the military, including on social media. The ICJ declared that Israel had to take all measures within its power to prevent the killing of Palestinians. In January, the number of posts dropped to just 37, with only 9 posted in February. While the number of allegations of civilian harm reduced slightly over the same period, it does not correlate with the scale of the drop-off in footage. In contrast, as of August 2024, the amount of published footage of strikes against the Hezbollah militant group in Lebanon had not declined to the same extent.
I think it's clear from the numbers that there was a significant drop-off around the time of the ICJ proceedings and the issuing of the Provisional Measures Order. I think it could be related to the fact that Israel might have realized that this footage that they're publishing could have evidential implications for the ICJ proceedings or other criminal proceedings against them.
In most of the 17 civilian harm incidents Air Wars matched to Israeli strike footage, there was no public evidence of a military target. However, in 5 cases, there was at least one militant killed or military object targeted. One such case was the high-profile killing of Ayman Nofal, a senior Hamas militant reported to have played a key role in the October 7th attacks. On October 17th, the IDF released black and white footage of a number of large explosions in a tightly packed residential neighbourhood. They gave no details of location, but the caption read, "We just eliminated Ayman Nofal, a senior Hamas operative." Air Wars geolocated the footage to Al-Baraj, a densely populated refugee camp in the middle of the Gaza Strip, revealing that the strike was below the area that Israel had warned civilians to evacuate from. Alongside Nofal and at least one other militant, Air Wars also documented at least 92 civilians killed while sheltering in nearby homes, including 40 children and 28 women. A video from the aftermath shows a crane sifting through rubble in a large crater, suggesting that heavy explosive munitions, potentially 2,000-pound bombs, were used. Advanced militaries, such as Israel's, have sophisticated systems for estimating the number of civilians that may be killed when conducting a strike on a military target. In the event that the number is high enough to be deemed potentially illegal, the strike should be abandoned. The Israeli magazine Plus 972 reported that to kill Nofal, the IDF had authorized the killing of approximately 300 civilians. While Israel has not confirmed this, analysts say that such a high figure would be unheard of in modern warfare.
The highest number in the US military operations in 20 years of military operations that I studied, from all the way from 2001, invasion of Afghanistan, right up to more or less the present day, was 50. So one target, one Hamas militant who we can talk about, and they were willing to consider up to the deaths of 300 innocent civilians who have nothing to do with the war or war efforts in order to kill that person. It's unprecedented, at least on the public record.
Even amongst Israel's closest allies, this acceptance of civilian harm is causing concern, particularly the use of 2,000-pound bombs, some of the largest munitions in modern military arsenals. Such bombs can leave craters more than 40 feet wide, and when used in heavily populated areas, the devastation is catastrophic. While Israel did not confirm the use of such bombs in the killing of Nofal, analysts said it was likely.
I look at that in terms of the evolution of the size of ordnance over the past 20 years for the U.S. over time. And we go through Iraq, Afghanistan, and then Iraq and Syria. We saw a move towards smaller and smaller munitions overall. Not that we didn't use 2,000-pound bombs, but we used many less. Because the goal was to try to find this sweet spot between being effective and reducing the risk of civilians. So to see the IDF use so many 2,000-pound bombs really just surprised me. I thought we had learned this lesson.
Sky News and Air Wars requested an interview with the Israeli military and sent a full list of questions. The IDF declined an interview, but provided a statement saying the focus of the investigation was extremely concerning, as it failed to highlight Hamas's history of operating from civilian neighborhoods and the brutality of the October 7th attack in Israel. It added that this investigation had intended to present the situation from a specific perspective only, and that many of the accusations and claims presented are baseless and constitute speculation. The IDF said publishing the clips of strikes had shown tens of millions of viewers how terrorist infrastructures are embedded within the civilian population, and that the Israeli military takes all feasible precautions to mitigate the harm to the civilian population. It added that Hamas had taken advantage of safe zones and increased its military presence, making strikes in areas where civilians had evacuated to unavoidable. In these cases, it said, additional precautions are taken to mitigate harm to civilians. With the war in Gaza continuing and a new conflict in Lebanon, the Israeli military continues to use strike footage to shape the narrative of its wars. But this investigation used that same footage to document the full harm of such strikes. The 17 videos that we matched represent just 1% of the strike footage posted by the IDF in Gaza since October 7th. The 3 cases we spotlighted raised serious concerns around Israeli military practice. And in each case, the release of the footage may ultimately make the IDF's justification harder.
It's definitely and absolutely the case that these videos could be used as criminal evidence against Israeli defendants, because they show so much. If you think about the elements of the war crimes under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, each individual element needs to be satisfied, and one of the main elements is that the perpetrator directed an attack. So if the perpetrator has published its own video of them directing an attack, then that's one element quite clearly satisfied.
See the full investigation with an interactive map on the Air Wars website.